Good afternoon. That's great. Great energy in this room. Well, Dean, it's my pleasure to recognize and welcome the class of 2025, along with their parents, family members, and other loved ones. It is wonderful to be together on this momentous occasion. To our new students, today's ceremony represents an important milestone for each of you, and you're undergoing this rite of passage at an extraordinary time in our collective history amidst an increasingly fragile dawn in the battle against the COVID pandemic. Impressively, you've chosen to answer the calling of the medical profession in a time of crisis, when the need for compassionate and humanistic physicians has never been greater. As Dean, I'm delighted that you've chosen to pursue your medical education here at Netter, where our unwavering commitment to humanism is rooted in the artwork of our namesake, the renowned medical illustrator, Dr. Frank H. Netter. It is fitting that the white coat ceremony elevates humanism as the core value of healthcare. The Gold Foundation, which has been instrumental to developing this ceremony, crafted the acronym CARES, C-A-R-E-S, to describe the key attributes of a humanistic healthcare professional, including collaboration and compassion, altruism, respect and resilience, empathy and service. And above and beyond these attributes, our commitment to humanistic healthcare also challenges us to think more broadly about the health and well-being of our patients and their communities, especially those who are most vulnerable. As the newest members of the Netter School of Medicine family, you're joining a diverse and inclusive community of students, faculty, staff, and clinical partners who are committed to fostering equitable health care for all communities. In closing, as you don your white coats today and every day forward, remember your commitment to upholding the values of humanistic health care and to ensuring equitable health care for all. Congratulations to the class of 2025 and welcome to the Netter School of Medicine family. I'd now like to take a moment to recognize our clinical faculty, medical science faculty, and Netter staff. Please stand and be recognized. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Rose Pitkin of the Netter class of 2022 and a fellow member of the Gold Humanism Honor Society.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rose Pitkin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a fourth year here at Netter, applying to pediatrics, and a member of the Gold Humanism Honor Society. My job today is to introduce the Gold Human Honor Society and then to introduce our keynote speaker. On behalf of the Gold Humanism Honor Society, I want to welcome you to the white coat ceremony for the class of 2025. This is a momentous day in your lives for both the students and the support team that helped you get here. I remember this day very clearly, and thank goodness I do, because it was only 3 years ago. And I remember so distinctly how proud I was of myself, how I couldn't stop smiling, how I felt like I had just achieved one of my biggest goals. And I hope you feel those things too. This is a special day, a special moment, one that you should be very proud of. You should smile a lot and do not feel like you need to hide your excitement. You earned this and you deserve to be here. Since 2002, the Gold Humanism Honor Society has recognized students, residents, and faculty who are exemplars of compassionate patient care and who serve as role models, mentors, and leaders in medicine. With chapters at more than 160 medical schools, there are over 35,000 members in training and in practice. At Netter, Gold Humanism is made up of 15% of the fourth-year class. These students have been nominated by their peers, invited to apply, and then selected by a committee. They are recognized for being excellent at the science of medicine and displaying the values of empathy and compassion in the way that they treat and communicate with their patients. Membership goes beyond selection and induction into an honor society. The power of the society lies in bringing together like-minded individuals to sustain their own humanism and to inspire and nurture humanism in others. At Netter, our chapter is student-run. We put on workshops for each class, and we identify 3 pillars of humanism: humanism towards patients, humanism towards colleagues, and humanism towards self. We believe that compassionate care has to extend not just to our patients, but to one another and to ourselves. To me, humanism means that we must recognize that the individual in front of us has an identity that extends far beyond the circumference in which we are meeting. This means taking time to learn about your classmates and their backgrounds and their paths to Netter. For me, one of my favorite questions to ask parents of patients and my patients is, what do you like to do when you're not hanging out with us? And I'm often met with a smile and a little bit of skepticism, and I think that's because we get so focused on the practice of healthcare that we often forget the art of personhood. When we ask one more question about someone's life beyond the context in which we are meeting, we start to uncover the ways we can relate to one another. This builds trust, it helps us better read the room, and helps us provide the most well-rounded care possible. Now, from the students of the Gold Humanism's Honor Society at Netter to the new medical students, we understand that the journey through medical school is hard. It is not hard because you're doing something wrong, and it is not hard because you don't deserve to be here. It is hard just because it is hard. You have to be gentle with yourself, care for yourself, your mental self, your physical self, and your spiritual self. Find time to continue all those hobbies you developed in quarantine: crocheting, sewing, baking bread, half finishing a puzzle, feeding the sourdough starter you maybe brought from some other state because you needed to have it with you here. Whatever it is, you have to find time for it. At Gold Humanism, we hope to expand your sense of empathy and compassion, and that may take you out of your comfort zone for a moment, but we promise it will lead to such wonderful connections and enhance your ability to deliver high-quality, patient-centered care and help you take care of yourself. Now, it is my absolute honor to introduce to you the keynote speaker for today's event. A 2017 graduate of Netter, Dr. Hinds has exemplified humanism throughout her career. She has dedicated herself to underserved communities, to accelerate the rate at which they gain access to quality health care, and to understand the barriers to doing so. She earned her bachelor's degree from Yale in the history of science, the history of medicine, and international studies, and a master's of public health from Yale with a focus on health policy and administration. Her research prior to medical school included examining an HIV and STD prevention intervention program for pregnant adolescents at community health centers and conducting the first known study on racial differences in orthostatic tolerance among women. As a member of the inaugural class at Netter, Dr. Hinds was the founder and president of the Student National Medical Association, a group to support underrepresented minorities in medicine, the founder and service chair of the American Medical Women's Association, and the founder of the Family Medicine Interest Group. She completed her residency training at the University of North Carolina in family medicine, and now is a family medicine physician with the Harvard Medical Faculty Physicians at Beth Israel Lahey Health Clinic in Boston. We are delighted she is able to join us and excited to welcome her back to the Netter community. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kumba Hinds.
Thank you for your kind introduction. All right. So I will never forget the day. It was March 13th, 2020. I was in the furthest corner of my residency workroom, pre-visit planning, for my upcoming clinic session, when the clinic director and one of the faculty members came in and asked me if I'd seen a particular patient in clinic that week. I confirmed that yes, I'd seen this person, and they exchanged this look between the two of them, and a few minutes later asked if I could chat privately in the chief's office. The first thing I noticed when I walked into that room is that the two of them stood as far away from me as possible, which made me really nervous. I couldn't think of anything I'd done wrong, but I started mentally revisiting every patient encounter from the past week. And that's when they told me that I may have come into contact with someone with coronavirus, and at the time we were still sending all of our samples to the CDC for testing, which meant that we wouldn't know for another 4 to 7 days. And at this point, their words were a blur. I started shaking and crying because I literally just returned to residency from maternity leave and had a newborn son at home. What I remember next was a rush of activity. I called my husband, who was in Boston working, and told him to come home. I called occupational health and was told that I needed to go home for an unspecified period of time. And so I went home. I started packing a suitcase. I called my mom, who lives in Connecticut, and asked her if she could watch my son, Vic Soule. And I had our nanny load our son into the car. I took him to the airport where I met my husband, who literally had just landed. He took the suitcase, he took our son, and the two of them walked away to check into their flight back to Boston. I couldn't kiss or hug either of them goodbye. Having to be separated from my newborn son out of fear of exposing him to a deadly virus was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire life. Before coronavirus upended our lives, I was really excited about going into practice. It was my 3rd and final year of residency. I was finally graduating, and after all of this time, all of this effort, I was realizing my lifelong dream of becoming a doctor. It was supposed to be a jubilant celebration, the culmination of so much sacrifice by myself and my loved ones, and COVID changed that significantly. I was confronted with a single heart-wrenching question. Was I willing, were we as a medical community willing to risk our lives and potentially the lives of our loved ones, for our calling? I want to be honest with you. The reality is that the system that I am now practicing in is different from the one that I suited up for in my own white coat short years ago. And it is likely to change again in another 8 and yet again thereafter. So how do you prepare to realize your dreams of becoming a physician and doing your life's work within this ever-changing context? It's simple, really. You show up as yourself, okay? And you remember that everyone that you are treating is loved, okay? They are someone's mother, daughter, sister, friend, in the same way that you are someone's mother, daughter, sister, friend. They are loved as you are loved. When I sat in your seat, I thought that intellect, experience, work ethic, and yes, compassion, empathy, were the things that made a doctor great. And yes, knowledge and skill matter. But if that were enough, you wouldn't have 2 people in the same hospital for the same condition, with the same treatment available to them, receiving different care. And yet this happens all the time. Look at the examples right in front of us with coronavirus. The disproportionate impact it has had on communities of color is frankly sinful and highlights the role that social determinants of health, things like racism, play. So what do we do about it? How do you realize your dream of becoming a physician and doing your life's work of caring for others in this system? Again, you show up as yourself and you remember that everyone that you treat is loved. So what does this mean? Showing up means being present. Our brains process stories in a way that is different from the way we process information from textbooks, case studies, examinations. You will learn from your patients by watching them, by talking to them, by engaging with them, and recognizing that they are whole humans with complicated lives, families, hopes, dreams, and fears, just like each and every one of you. As a medical student, you are given more time than you will ever be given in any point in your medical career to talk to patients. Relish in it. The information that you glean from these encounters is critical to your patient's treatment plan. You just don't know it yet. Mrs. Jones in room 3 was admitted for diabetic ketoacidosis, and she tells you that she's been sharing her insulin with her granddaughter who cannot afford her own. That insight alone can save 2 lives. The pregnant patient in Bay 3 who was here for urinary retention, you took a careful history on them and learned she's been taking Benadryl for her allergies. She can go home. She just needs to stop taking that Benadryl. Spend time with people, and I promise the knowledge will come. All right, so you've shown up. What then? Be yourself. Authenticity is critical. Do not try to fit the mold of what you think a doctor should be. Instead, take the time to understand who you are and why you've chosen this path. Know what your biases are. We all have them. Acknowledge them and know that these biases can literally mean life or death for your patients. This is not an exaggeration. Do the uncomfortable work and face them head on. This could save lives. You will experience some of your highest highs and lowest lows in these next 4 years. You will be the first person to bear witness to the miracle of life, and you will be the last face that someone sees before they pass. There is immense power and privilege that comes in this position, and with that power and privilege comes immense responsibility. So I'm going to challenge you to do that work now. Really think carefully, find out who you are, what makes you tick, what your biases are again, so you can be ready to care for other people with the dignity and respect that they deserve. People will come in because they're sick and vulnerable, and we cannot hold them to the same standard we do for people at their very best. You will have moments where you are put on a pedestal, and others where you may not be treated the way that you should. Things like racism, homophobia, xenophobia are ever present. I cannot tell you the number of times I've entered a room, and despite introducing myself as Dr. Hinds and wearing my white coat and badge, I'm handed the food tray because the thought is that that is what I'm there to do because I'm Black and I'm female. You need to understand how powerful it is for you to be there, caring for that person, okay? And what it means for you to be present as you are. It's funny we don't even recognize the impression we leave on people simply by being present and being ourselves. My pediatrician, Dr. Garcia, is the reason why I thought from the age of 3 that I, a young woman of color, could become a physician. And I just realized that she likely has no idea, so I'm going to thank her. And I would encourage you all to thank those who have inspired and supported you on your journey to this day. So to that end, I thank all of those in this room who have contributed to my journey. Okay? I thank my husband, my mother, my sister, the faculty, administration, and staff who have been here since my own white coat ceremony in 2013. I am grateful to my son, Vic Soule, who has brought me so much joy and serves as a constant reminder that I, too, am loved. To the class of 2025, I am grateful for each and every one of you. In fact, I am in awe of you as you courageously don your white coat, prepare to do this important work in the midst of a pandemic. Thank you.
Let's have another warm round of applause for Dr. Hinds. As a small token of our very deep appreciation for her inspirational remarks, it's my pleasure to present her with this gift.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nathan Davis, Interim Associate Dean for Student Affairs. He'll share a few words before leading the cloaking of the class of 2025.
Thank you, Dean Bozell. At this time, I would like to ask Drs. Helgren, Weinstein, and Franconi to come up to prepare for cloaking our students. So in addition to receiving your white coat this afternoon, which acts as a symbol of your profession, the class of 2025 will also receive a stethoscope, which symbolizes the connection between the physician and the patient, a very real physical connection. And with that, class of 2025, welcome. Hatim Amiji. Adibawali Babalola. John Bakey. Stephanie Balint. Isabel Barbosa. Kizzy Belfon. Cameron Bonner. Marina Caro. Suzanne Kerr. Alice Chen. Ahmad Chugtai. Tiana Clemens. Luisa Darko. Morgan Davis. Julia Dietz. Gabby D'Onofrio. Emmanuel Joma. Bridget Elder. Christine Etzel. Jack Fickey. Zachariah Foster. Mackenzie Gazora. John Nalian. Avilio Gonzalez. Connor Graham. John Gribben. Irvin Ham. Liam Harvey. Isaiah Holloway, Jr. Sarah Malin Hustavius. Soonju Yuang. Jacqueline Jun Chapman. Jacob Johnson. John Jovan. Alexandra Kane. Tillen Karuna Nayaka. Nora Keller. Olivia Kelly. Tara Kobayashi. Daryl LaMonica. Thank you, faculty. I would now like to ask Drs. Conti and Kurtzman to come to the stage. Elizabeth Nemelieva Landry. Sarah LaRoseliere. Daniela Lazarus. Owen Lagasse. Jessica Lorette. Kevin Lee. Manaz Pachwa Majaswala. Anna Maloney. Dominic Mancini. Aaron Marcel. Devin McAllister. Hillary Marenfeld. Morgan Mohala. Justine Murphy. Labina Mustafa. Arun Narikati. Nalab Nosrati. Chase Nelson. Kaylee O'Connell. Cameron O'Connor. Cassidy O'Neill. Michelle O'Perry. Grace Orban. Christine Parkent. Priya Patel. Twinkle Patel. Samantha Pachenka. Paola Peralta Tarreyes. Joanne Pierre-Louis. Rachel Pitt. Emily Plume. Thank you, faculty. I would now like to ask Drs. Hall and Dr. Fogarasi to come up. Alex Portillo. Anthony Razzo. Jennifer Rivas. Emma Rosenstein. Rachel Rosso. Bruna Haceto Basso. Ashley Sanchez. Eldar Sorkin. Louise Stephan. Maria Stevens. Melissa Ubida Arias. Akianasine Ukuenduba. Colin Ueki. Amber Vargas. Elise Vasco. Ava Voss. Scott Vela Sorensen. Shiv Verma. Anisha Wallace. Christy Wang. Carly Rose Westerman. Kevin Shaw. Sarah Yoder. And Edward Zhu. Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause for that really beautiful cloaking ceremony. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Listy Thomas, Assistant Dean of Simulation and Professor of Medical Sciences, who will lead the class in the Oath of Self-Care and Well-Being.
Thank you, Dean Bizzell. Very nice to see you all in your white coats, and I am sure you can think of right now all of the effort and the road that you had to take to get here to put those coats on, and for that we applaud you. But I'd also like you to take a moment to reflect on what the coat means for your future and this profession that you're about to enter. And so I want to take some time to read some words from an article on the Oath to Self-Care and Well-Being that was published last year in the Journal of the Alliance of Academic Internal Medicine. Central to the pledge of the Hippocratic Oath, which you are about to take next, is to care for patients with the utmost sincerity, empathy, and kindness, and to uphold the highest ethical standards. The tenets of the Hippocratic Oath have stood steadfast for millennia, even though the scope and practice of medicine has vastly changed. I know all of us who have been practicing in medicine over the last year and a half have experienced quite a shock to our own understanding of what medicine is. And we fought COVID, as Dr. Hinds was telling you. We fought against COVID for our patients, for our colleagues, and for our families. You join us in this endeavor now. Though medicine is rapidly changing, the principles that underpin effective patient care, the ones that Dean Boiselle mentioned to you, the CARES mnemonic, the ones that Rose was talking about, they remain the same. I want to add a few more adverbs to that, which is the principles of humility, integrity, and temperance that will help you as medical students navigate through the changing healthcare landscape that we are in currently, while maintaining the core values that brought you here in the first place. Humility is essential. It is important that we realize that none of us are perfect. We cannot do everything. We cannot be everything. We all make mistakes. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Asking for forgiveness and forgiving oneself is acceptable. Physicians and medical students must realize that they need to care for themselves first in order to provide the best possible care to our patients. Members of the Collaborative for Healing and Renewal in Medicine introduced the Oath to Self-Care and Well-Being in 2020, last year, as a professional pledge for clinicians, learners, and all those in medicine to assist in the creation of our own shared responsibility towards a culture of wellness. It is really through the relationships that we have with one another that we can learn to thrive in our communities. But the most important relationship that we must check in with regularly is with ourselves. So I'd like to welcome all of our students and anyone in the practice in medicine, all of us on stage to stand with me, please, and we'll recite together the Oath to Self-Care and Well-Being that's found in your program. So we'll say it together. We solemnly pledge to embrace and promote the well-being of ourselves, our colleagues, and the medical community as part of our responsibility to the effective care of our patients, ourselves, and in partnership with our healthcare organization. We will seek to develop and adhere to habits that promote and maintain humility, meaning, and wholeness of self in our work and interactions. We will be attuned to the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual needs of ourselves and others, and share our practice of well-being for the benefits of our patients, our colleagues, and the advancement of healthcare. We will commit to integration and balance in our professional and personal life, and seek help when we feel we ourselves or our peers are overburdened, fatigued, or less compassionate. We will champion for a healthcare system that values the well-being of its personnel, uses best evidence for an institutional culture of wellness, and recognizes that in so promoting, the patients we care for are ultimately best served. We will find the courage to be vulnerable and confront professional wrongdoings to the best of our ability, while at the same time showing compassion and respect for all members of the healthcare team. I make these promises of well-being to myself and to the vocation of medicine with my highest commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. These principles are more important now than ever, and we're so grateful to you for sharing that and for leading us in the oath of self-care and well-being. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rinyu Boatwright, Interim Associate Dean of Student Affairs, who will lead the recitation of the Hippocratic Oath.
Hi, good afternoon. If I could ask the class of 2025 to please stand. And to join them, could I ask all other medical students as well as physicians to please stand and recite the Hippocratic Oath? We have the pleasure of reading this together. I swear to fulfill, to the best of my ability and judgment, this covenant. I will respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose step I walk, and gladly share such knowledge as is mine with those who are to follow. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures that are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. I will remember that there is an art to medicine as well as a science, and that warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or the chemist's drug. I will not be ashamed to say, I know not, nor will I fail to call in my colleagues when the skills of another are needed for a patient's recovery. I will respect the privacy of my patients, for their problems are not disclosed to me that the world may know. Most especially must I tread with care in matters of life and death. If it is given me to save a life, all thanks, but it may also be within my power to take a life. This awesome responsibility must be faced with great humbleness and awareness of my own frailty. Above all, I must not play at God. I will remember that I do not treat a fever chart, a cancerous growth, but a sick human being whose illness may affect the person's family and economic stability. My responsibility includes these related problems if I am to care adequately for the sick. I will prevent disease whenever I can, for prevention is preferable to cure. I will remember that I remain a member of society with special obligations to all of my fellow human beings, those sound of mind and body as well as the infirm. If I do not violate this oath, may I enjoy life and art, respected while I live and remembered with affection thereafter. May I always act so as to preserve the finest traditions of my calling, and may I long experience the joy of healing those who seek my help. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boatwright. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mark Yeckel, Associate Dean for Admissions, to present the class.
Got to fluff up the beard a little bit. This is one of my favorite things to do. I get to look at you. It's been a long path to get here. It's been a long year, and I'm just thrilled to talk about you. I get to brag about you. I get to tell you all and your family and my colleagues some of the things you do and where you come from. And I think it's just a wonderful thing. I know you've started to get to know each other because I've had more than a couple people come up to me and say, this is a really interesting class. And I think they say it in a good way. And it's true. It's absolutely true. And as I said the other day, we are thrilled to have you here. And I think after especially this year, we are going to find it invigorating, energizing, uplifting. So I hope we can enjoy it together. I mean, med school is hard, but there is a lot of joy to be found. So I'm going to talk about you, and I'm going to start off with some numbers. We got 9,212 applications. That's 28% more than last year. Nationally, it was about 18%. 57% of our total applications were from women, which is very interesting, which means 43% were from men. Yes, it's really nice. Out of that 9,000 plus, we asked about 4% to interview. In the class of 2025, 95 of you, that represents 1% of that 9,000. So give you perspective. I know, it's great. And that means if you had all just applied, all of you except for one would have to leave right now. That's impressive. And it's a tribute to what you've done. People ask me, how can you read all those applications? And, it's a pleasure for me because you're so accomplished. You are doing things for people for the right reasons. And it really is a nice thing for me to read, especially in this crazy world. So I thank you for that. So the class of 2025, 95, is composed of 60 women and 35 men. Yeah. You come from 23 different states. Most of you come from the Northeast and New England. 31 of you come from Connecticut. Massachusetts and California are well represented with 13 and 12. You graduated from 50 different undergraduate schools. So you have a lot of stories to share about where you come from and schools. 18% of you have postgraduate degrees. And as with most of our classes, we have a more mature, experienced class. The average age is 25, whereas nationally it's 23. 92% of you took at least one gap or enrichment year. So that means 8% of you just came straight from college, which is, that's nice. Something else that's very consistent across our classes are the number of our students who are immigrants or children of immigrants. 44% of you are immigrants or children of immigrants. And that's just, that is awesome. And you come from the following countries and U.S. territories. You come from Cuba, Haiti, Grenada, Puerto Rico, El Salvador, Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil. France, Malta, Russia, Estonia, Kazakhstan, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Jordan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, China, Vietnam, Hong Kong, South Korea, and last but not least, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Yeah, and not only do you come from a lot of places, over a quarter of you have been all over the world pre-pandemic to do service work and medical mission work and study abroad. We also have seven of your classmates are military veterans. Yeah. They were deployed all over the world, including combat zones in Afghanistan. And we have several students who are committed to joining the military after they graduate. So, it's always interesting for me, and as we talk about seeing your patients as human beings and trying to understand their lives, their mothers and children, you've done a lot of things, and it always reminds me that you are the young people that we interact with every day, and we don't really know what your desires and your motivations are and what your goals are. And some of those things that you have done sound so mundane, but they are really, really important for experience and actually learning how to deal with people. You've been waitresses and waiters, bartenders, baristas, ice cream scoopers. Some have worked in fast food joints, supermarkets as cashiers and the person who washes the produce. Some have delivered food. You've worked in bookstores and clothing stores. A couple of you have been dog walkers and/or provided foster care for dogs. Some started their online business or sold their creations on Etsy. One started a baked goods business. Many of you have been camp counselors, lifeguards, and surf patrol members, athletic coaches, youth sports referees, personal fitness trainers, and 2 students were either a park ranger or a game warden. Another student was part of the rescue and rehab team for the New England Aquarium. Many of you have been tutors and mentors to kids. A couple have been teachers' assistants. Some of you have been interpreters. There have been office managers, a personal assistant. one of your classmates worked for a major television network as a broadcasting and program on their broadcasting and program development team. Our students have worked, or you all have worked in biotech, in pharmaceutical companies. One of you was a regulatory affairs analyst for a pharmaceutical company. Most of you have done research, really important research on COVID and Alzheimer's disease, and many of you have publications. It's just very impressive. Every one of you have worked in healthcare to some degree, and many of you stepped up during COVID. Some of you have been contact tracers, COVID-19 counselors and vaccinators. Many of you have been emergency medical technicians, emergency department technicians, scribes to physicians, chief scribes and scribe trainers. Some have worked as medical assistants or as medical office managers or at the front desk. Two of our new students are registered nurses. And several of you have experienced what I think is one of the most challenging jobs, and that's to be a certified nursing assistant. Yeah. Still others have provided compassionate hospice care. Some have worked in free health clinics. A handful of students have done really dedicated work as substance abuse counselors. One student led yoga for Parkinson's disease patients. 3 of our students worked with patients through applied behavioral analysis therapy, while 2 others were overnight residential counselors for troubled youth and the disabled. One of our students worked for the Michigan State Department of Public Health, and 2 students worked for the New York City Department of Public Health. And one of your classmates counseled the incarcerated at Rikers Island. I'm not done. You're remarkably service-oriented. You've worked with the homeless and in homeless shelters. Some have provided community service through AmeriCorps. Several have participated with Habitat for Humanity. Others have mentored and tutored refugees and immigrants. A handful have been rape crisis counselors or have worked with abused women or at abused women's shelters. You know, you're academically strong. On average, you're in the 85th percentile in terms of MCAT score. Quite honestly, I don't care about that. I care about the other things. And those are, you know, you're well-rounded. You participate in athletics and the arts. We have intercollegiate athletes who participated at a very high level. The women have participated in intercollegiate crew, and one of your classmates was on the U.S. national rowing team. The women have participated in intercollegiate wrestling, taekwondo, fencing, soccer, volleyball, and field hockey. The men have participated in intercollegiate hockey, football, lacrosse, and squash. But it doesn't end there. Many of you have done club sports. Skiing, triathlon team, soccer, baseball, ultimate frisbee, cycling, and more. We have black belts who have competed nationally, distance athletes who have run marathons and done triathlons. There are power lifters, rock climbers, and at least one equestrian. You also participate in the arts. We have painters and drawers, photography enthusiasts. We have musicians and singers. Some of you have been part of the university choir or gospel choirs or a cappella groups. We have guitarists, pianists, violinists, ukuleleists, I don't know if that works, and more. You know, I could go on, and it takes some effort for me to kind of distill it all down. But I love sharing these experiences, accomplishments, and interests. You are truly a formidable group. But you know what's most important to me is that you're engaged citizens of your community, the country, and the world. You are reflective, passionate about what you do, kind and caring, and have a strong sense of social justice. Lastly, you have immeasurable grit and resilience. And don't forget that. You know, you're going to hit some hard times in med school, and you got to just dig deep for that grit that you've demonstrated throughout this path. You know, I can only imagine how proud you are. They're just an incredible group. So why don't you stand up? Let's take a moment to honor, congratulate, and welcome the class of 2025.